What if I told you that the money you're so desperately seeking doesn't stem from your effort, but from your energy? That what truly attracts prosperity into your life isn't your working hours, but the silent frequency you emit every single day, even without realizing it. This video is a profound journey of reconnecting with your true source of abundance. You'll understand, in a simple yet powerful way, why money doesn't respond to struggle, but to your inner state. If you've ever felt exhausted from overworking and still seeing meager results, if you've ever been afraid to spend, ashamed to ask, or angry for not achieving, here you'll discover what no one has taught you about wealth. It is born from within. Watch until the end, and you'll learn how to release limiting beliefs, shift your frequency, and activate financial flow in your life without forced effort. It's not about magic, it's about consciousness. Are you ready to stop chasing and become the place where money wants to return? Then come with me. I used to believe that money was something tangible, printed, kept in banks, counted in numbers, and secured by effort. But then, on a completely unexpected day, a question arose in my mind, gently but powerfully. If money is truly material, why are there people who do so little and have more than enough, while others work their entire lives and still struggle? This question didn't necessitate an immediate answer, as it unlocked a portal, ushering me into a higher realm of consciousness. It was there that I came to grasp that money is not material, it is energy. And once you truly comprehend that money is energy, every outdated definition you once subscribed to begins to crumble. Money doesn't originate from the labor you perform. It emanates from who you are when you perform it. It doesn't respond to the outward efforts you exhibit, but rather to the frequency you silently emit from within. Money doesn't heed the words you speak, but it clearly understands the vibration in which you are living. I want you to envision this. If life is a musical composition, then money is a note that only resonates when you truly harmonize with the melody of abundance. It doesn't pursue you, nor does it hide from you. It is simply seeking someone who knows how to tune in. And if you are here reading these words, then perhaps, much like I once was, you are beginning to remember something ancient that your soul has always known. That prosperity is not a goal to be attained, but a state that has always existed within you. Just as a flower does not need to learn to bloom, because blooming is its nature, you do not need to learn to become wealthy. You merely need to recall your inherent nature of abundance. I want to tell you the first story, a story about Eleanor, a woman who sold herbs in a bustling market a long time ago. Each morning, she meticulously counted the coins she earned, convinced that wealth was as tangible as the metal pieces in her grasp, until one day, a mysterious traveler appeared and declared, "I sell nothing you can touch, but I sell all that you can imagine." The statement struck Eleanor's consciousness like a bolt of lightning. From that day forward, she began to perceive the coins in her hands not as mere tangible objects, but as vessels holding an unseen current of energy. Her small shop, while remaining physically unaltered, underwent a profound internal metamorphosis. Her mindset shifted away from dwelling on lack and instead began to resonate with abundance. Consequently, without any additional exertion, more patrons arrived, and money flowed as effortlessly as water, simply because she no longer operated from a frequency of scarcity. You know, I used to be like Harold, a humble mailman with a modest salary. He didn't possess anything you'd call wealth if you looked at his bank account. But in his soul, Harold lived as if he already had enough. He saw wealth in the morning sunlight, in the laughter of children, in the gentle breeze that wafted as he ambled down the street. Then, one day, he received an unexpected inheritance. But for Harold, it was merely the material manifestation of something he already felt in his spirit. And those around him noticed that Harold did not change after acquiring money, because he already carried the energy of affluence before the physical arrived. I am telling you these stories not to incite you to emulate their actions, but to remind you of this. Money does not respond to effort. Money responds to frequency. It does not hear you say, "I need money," but hears you loud and clear when your heart vibrates with the state of, "I am ready to receive." This is why the first thing I do every morning isn't to check emails or list tasks, but to spend a few quiet minutes, close my eyes, and visualize money not as paper or digits, but as a stream of golden light flowing toward me, gently, naturally, without force. I don't pull it, I don't chase it. I simply open myself to allow it to return. And when you practice this daily, not to conjure magic, but to recalibrate your life's frequency, you will begin to feel something miraculous. You will no longer feel stressed about money. You will cease to shrink inwardly every time you spend. You will no longer envy the wealthy, nor feel ashamed of your financial standing. Instead, you will feel money flowing to you in your own way, in harmony with the universe, because you have aligned yourself with it. I want you to try this. Dedicate one morning, just a few minutes, find a tranquil space, close your eyes, breathe deeply, and visualize streams of golden light flowing towards you. No doubting voices, no questions like, "Is this real?" Just breathe and feel as if this energy has always been flowing in your direction, simply waiting for you to open your heart to receive. Hold this image in your heart until your entire body feels expansive, like a natural conductor of prosperity. Because in truth, you have never lacked anything. You simply need to remember this. You are the very place money wants to return home to. I used to believe that money was a flow originating from the external world, a domain where individuals had to contend for it, hoard it, and exert control over it. However, one day I turned my gaze inward and recognized that money does not course in a straight line. Rather, it meanders along the arc of belief. It is not responsive to the outstretched hand, but to the energy you emanate. It listens to you in silent introspection before manifesting outwardly. And the marvel is that when you achieve true stillness, you can discern its call, like an ancient tide that has perpetually awaited your remembrance. Allow me to recount the tale of Clara, a girl who resided in the gentle hills beyond a quaint village. Clara carried a heart brimming with gratitude, and this heart became the magical wand that unlocked the flow of prosperity in her life. On a warm summer day, Clara happened upon an old well that had been buried under the dust of time. Gazing deeply into its clear waters, she noticed something peculiar. Whenever her heart filled with gratitude, the water surged forth powerfully. But the moment a flicker of concern or doubt entered her mind, the flow would cease, trickling hesitantly. It was then that Clara realized something no one had ever taught her. Wealth did not depend on external sources, but on the inner state of her being. I used to live as if water only flowed when I did well enough, worked hard enough, calculated carefully enough. But it turns out that wealth is like water from a well. It flows in response to the signal you send from your emotions, not your logic. When you feel grateful, at ease, confident, you open a channel, and money finds its way to you like water seeking a crevice. But when you are tense, forced, resistant, You close that gate, and no matter how many opportunities exist out there, it remains a desert within. Much like Walter, a merchant from the valley. He spent his life accumulating, calculating, counting every coin, building invisible walls around his money to protect it. But the more he tried to hold on to it, the more the money slipped through his fingers like water through a clenched fist. In the end, just when he no longer had the strength to manage it, when illness forced him to be still and rely on others, the very thing he feared losing began to flourish. His business, under the care of people he once distrusted, started to thrive. The more he let go, the more money returned. I share this not to suggest you relinquish control, but to help you understand that a more subtle, more profound kind of control exists. It is the control over the energy you emit every day. You can hold your financial plans tightly, but if your mind is filled with fear, you are sending a message to the universe saying, "I don't believe money will come." And the universe, like a great mirror, does not judge. It shows no mercy. It simply reflects precisely what you radiate. It does not look at what you desire. It looks at the belief with which you truly live each day. What I've learned is that wealth doesn't demand you do more. It demands you feel differently. When you view the world through the eyes of someone already abundant, you emit a signal of expansion. When you're grateful for a small cup of coffee, a cool breeze, an embrace from a loved one, you are already living in the stream of prosperity rather than waiting for it to arrive. Take a moment, breathe deeply, and ask yourself, what vibration am I operating on? Are you feeling light, peaceful, confident that everything is unfolding in the best possible way? Or are you pushing money away with worry, comparison, and fear? The current of prosperity is always there, like an ancient stream running beneath the surface of consciousness. You simply need to dig deep enough within yourself to find it. A simple practice I maintain every day, and perhaps you might want to try, is to imagine myself standing beside a stream of golden light. I breathe deeply, visualizing each inhale as a flow of money, a wave of energy coursing towards me. I don't need to hold on to it. I don't need to ask how much. I simply let it flow through me, like air, like light, like life. Because you are not someone who chases money. You are the river into which money yearns to flow. And like all rivers, it needs only one thing, that its current not be obstructed by the stones of doubt, fear, and control. When you release those things, you need do nothing else. The water will begin to surge. Perhaps you have spent many years laboring under the conviction that money stems from exertion. However, today, I invite you to embrace a novel comprehension. Money originates from the depths of alignment, from the sentiments you cultivate each morning, from the openness you embody daily. From the moment you stop asking, "How do I get more money?" and start asking, "Am I living in alignment with the frequency of abundance?" That is the first step, and it is one of the most important to return to the ancient current. The current that has always been waiting for you to remember that you no longer need to chase wealth. You simply need to become the place where it wants to flow. And when you live this way, not pretending, not forcing positivity, but walking each day with a sense of peace, gratitude, and a natural presence, as if the money were already here, already yours, you will witness what some might call a miracle. But I will not call it a miracle. I will simply call it the natural reality of someone living in alignment with their true energy. There is something I want you to hear very deeply, not with your ears, but with your inner sense. Every thought you nurture daily is not merely a fleeting mental activity, but a signal, an invisible electromagnetic field that is being transmitted and attracting precisely what you hold in your mind. Your mind does not just think, it emits waves. And these waves are a silent invitation to the universe saying, I am ready to receive. Therefore, if you feel you are living in scarcity, the first thing you need to do is not to find a second job. It is to take a closer look at what frequency you are broadcasting on every day. I recall a woman who resided in a modest apartment overlooking a park, Dorothy. Every morning she would settle beside her aging piano, her fingers no longer as spry as they once were. Yet her heart still conjured the delicate melodies of a bygone golden age. One day, she resolved to transform, not by embarking on some grand endeavor, but simply by beginning each morning to affirm to herself a few simple yet potent declarations. I am a magnet for prosperity. Money flows to me naturally. I am worthy of wealth in all its forms. Initially, those words sounded alien, akin to a discordant melody her mind wasn't yet attuned to embracing. Yet, she persevered. Each line was rehearsed, every morning, much like a virtuoso refining a nascent composition. And then, something remarkable transpired, not externally, but from within. Dorothy's inner voice began to believe, and from that point on, her life began to change, not because she acquired new skills, but because the frequency she was emitting had completely shifted. You might not realize it, but every thought you repeat is generating a magnetic field. Someone who constantly worries about money is emitting the frequency of, I don't have enough. And the universe, like an honest recorder, doesn't ask if you truly want scarcity. It simply reflects the exact frequency you transmitted. Situations of lack, unexpected bills, nameless obstacles. Conversely, when you think with the sentiment of I am gradually moving toward abundance, that energetic flow begins to reorganize things you never thought possible. I once met a man named Eugene, who owned a grocery store in an old market. He constantly repeated things like, there aren't many customers. Money is always scarce. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. And predictably, customers dwindled, bills piled up. It wasn't because Eugene lacked talent. It was because he lived as though every door had already been shut, and so the universe found no reason to open anymore. Everything only began to change when a close friend of Eugene's, someone who profoundly understood the power of words, advised him to try doing the opposite. Though skeptical, Eugene began to change the words he spoke every day. My ideal clients are finding me. Money is coming from unexpected sources. I am worthy of prosperity. In the beginning, nothing happened, but a few weeks later, something surprising occurred. An investor happened to visit the shop, fell in love with Eugene's special product, and decided to invest in the brand's expansion. From then on, more and more customers arrived. But the most important thing of all was that Eugene had truly shifted his internal frequency. I share these stories not to make you think that simply uttering a few positive phrases will change everything. No, I'm sharing them because I want you to understand that every word you choose, every thought you sustain, is broadcasting a vibration. And this very vibration dictates your financial life, not your salary or the stock market. Imagine your mind as a signal transmitter. If you are constantly broadcasting lack, scarcity, I have to struggle to survive, you are attracting precisely those experiences. But if you tune your signal to the frequency of possibility, abundance, and ease, then you begin to attract things that may seem random, but are in fact the universe's response to your shift. I encourage you to try something simple. Every morning, write 3 affirmations about money, but don't just write them as a checklist exercise. Write them as if you were generating waves. Say them aloud with conviction, as if you are calling something that already exists back into your life. For example, I allow money to come to me easily. I'm a magnet for abundance. I live in the energy of wealth. Speak these words the way Dorothy once did, not to convince anyone else, but to reprogram your own frequency. Because in reality, money doesn't know whether you're telling the truth or faking it. It only responds to the emotions you're holding. And if you persist in the practice, you'll begin to feel, not from your bank account, but from within, that you're transitioning from someone who chases money to someone who transmits a signal that attracts it. When your mind shifts, your reality begins to bend to match. When you adjust your inner magnetic field, your physical life has no choice but to respond. This isn't superstition, it's a law of energy. And you don't need to understand everything for it to work. You simply need to begin tuning your thoughts, much like a musician tuning their instrument before a performance. Then you will see that each aligned vibration brings a new melody to your financial life. There are words we hear from a very young age, and because we hear them so frequently, we mistake them for truth. Money doesn't grow on trees. Rich people are usually not good people. Our family was never well off. These phrases don't stem from malice. They often originate from those we love most, our parents, grandparents, teachers, individuals who, themselves, carry invisible wounds passed down through generations. And so, like an unnamed curse, these beliefs are reiterated, passed along and quietly preserved until someone in the lineage stands up, stops and says, "Enough." I don't know what beliefs about money you hold, but I know one thing. If you've never questioned them, you're likely living within someone else's belief system. Perhaps it's your parents. Perhaps it's the mindset of an entire community or culture accustomed to the concept of scarcity, with a mentality of having enough is good or don't dream too big. But not everything that is repeated is true. Some things were only true within the context in which previous generations lived, but they are completely false when applied to you, someone living with a different mindset and in a different era. I recall Frank, a master shoemaker devoted to his craft. Each pair of shoes he fashioned was as beautiful as a work of art. Yet customers gradually dwindled. Though his skill never waned, prosperity receded ever further. Every night, he sat alone by the oil lamp, repeating the words passed down by his father. Nothing in this life comes easy. To survive, you must suffer. He believed those words with the same certainty he believed in the sun. And that very belief, not the market, not the product, stifled his capacity for growth. Frank wasn't poor because he lacked talent. He was poor because he carried an outdated financial map, penned by his ancestors and never once re-examined. Have you ever noticed how there are beliefs you never consciously chose, yet still hold true? Money and spirituality cannot coexist. To help others, you must sacrifice your own well-being. Good people are generally not wealthy. These notions arrive as advice, but behind them lies fear, the shadows of a past wounded by money. Perhaps your grandparents lost everything in a failed investment. Perhaps a relative was exploited for their kindness. And because they didn't want you to repeat the same pain, they instilled a fear of money disguised under the guises of caution, contentment, and don't be greedy. However, unless you pause and look more deeply, you will not realize that some of those fears are no longer valid in your life. I had to pose a rather difficult question to myself. Of all the things I believe about money, which ones are genuinely mine and which are merely memories of others that I've been unconsciously carrying? This question rendered me speechless, as I realized that most of the limitations I'd attributed to my own personality were in fact echoes of words that had never truly belonged to me. I want you to try something with me. Take a blank sheet of paper and write down 5 common sayings about money that you've heard since childhood. Don't judge them, just write them down. Then look at each one as if you were looking at an elderly loved one, someone who passed it down to you not because they were mean, but because they were afraid. And gently ask yourself, is this still true for me? Or is it time to return this belief to that person before me with gratitude, but no longer holding on to it? Just like Ruth, a weaver who resided in a small valley. Her family had always told her, people like us cannot have more. And she believed it until one autumn morning, watching the leaves drift freely on the wind. She wondered, why can't I live as lightly as these leaves? And in that instant, she ceased to echo the words of others. She began to speak anew. I can live abundantly and still be humble. I can be wealthy and still be kind. Not long thereafter, a merchant discovered her unique designs and placed a substantial order. It wasn't luck. It was because Ruth had fundamentally altered her financial belief system. I share this not for you to blame your parents or feel guilt over the past. Quite the contrary. I want you to know this. You, through your present awareness, can be the first in your family to break free from the cycle of limiting beliefs. You are not just doing this for yourself. You are healing an entire ancestral stream and opening a new doorway for future generations. Money is not evil. Money is not good. Money is energy, and that energy will amplify whatever you carry in your heart. If you believe you are unworthy, it will amplify your doubt. But if you believe you were born with an inherent right to live abundantly, that will amplify your inner power to the point where the entire universe must rearrange itself to support you. I want you to know that you do not need to carry burdens that are not yours. Like an old coat that once kept someone warm through a harsh winter, but now merely smothers in the spring, you can shed it. You can let it go and walk forward, not with resentment, but with gratitude. For through the old lessons, you have grown enough to forge a new path today. Therefore, if today you feel ready, I invite you to place your hand over your heart and say these words: I allow myself to be rich. I will no longer repeat old beliefs. I'm creating a new chapter where money and kindness, money and spirituality, money and love coexist within me in harmony. May these words be the new threads that weave the fabric of your life. And then the miracle will come, not from some distant place, but from the very energy you have just unleashed within yourself. There is a principle that I believe everyone has heard at some point in their lives, whether through the words of a teacher, an ancient text, or simply by observing nature. That which ceases to flow dies. Water that does not circulate becomes stagnant. Air that does not move becomes suffocating. And money, like all other forms of energy, needs to flow, be exchanged, be set in motion to remain vital. I call this the sacred law of circulation. I used to live through a period when every dollar I earned was accompanied by a fear of loss. I clung tightly, cut back on expenses, and hesitated to give even a small amount because I thought, what if I lose it? But then I realized that when you hold on to money out of fear, you unconsciously block the flow that allows it to return. You don't get rich by hoarding, you get rich by circulating with intention, with confidence, and with love. Allow me to tell you about Raymond. a blacksmith who resided in a small village. He toiled assiduously, hammering away day and night, and money began to pour in. Yet the more he accrued, the more he retreated into himself. He hesitated to help others, fearing exploitation, meticulously counting every coin as if each represented his lifeline. Then something peculiar transpired. The more he hoarded, the more hollow he felt. His chest was replete with coins, yet his heart remained frigid. The joy, the exhilaration had vanished. Ultimately, this void compelled him to pause. He embarked on what he had previously dared not attempt: mending tools for the impoverished without compensation, mentoring the village youth in blacksmithing, and opening his forge to nascent apprentices. And from the instant he began giving without calculation, wealth started to flow back, richer, more profound in its significance. Customers from neighboring villages, nobles, and places he had never imagined began to appear, not because he marketed himself better, but because his energy shifted from contraction to expansion, from defense to circulation. I'm not suggesting you should spend recklessly or give indiscriminately. I'm speaking of conscious circulation, undertaken with confidence and the frequency of love. Consider Lillian, a woman who had just lost her husband, living in a modest home with her last savings. One afternoon, a stranger knocked on her door, requesting sustenance, and Lillian, though she had but one loaf of bread remaining, chose to divide it in half. Not because she was wealthy, but because she wished to live in the energy of the confidence that the universe would not abandon an open heart. That night she received a letter. An aunt in the city had passed away and left her a considerable inheritance. You may call it luck, I do not. I call it the natural response of a universe that clearly hears the frequency you emit. There is something I want you to deeply internalize. Giving and receiving are not two separate actions. They are two breaths of the same life cycle. When you give, you create space, and that space is a signal to the universe that you are ready to receive. When you receive, you are storing energy so you can give again. And when both actions are performed with the correct mindset, unhurried, uncalculated, unjudged, you enter a miraculous flow that I call the river of conscious prosperity. I know people who are exceptionally adept at giving but are apprehensive about receiving. They hold the belief that receiving is selfish, even shameful. But do you know what? When you refuse to receive, you disrupt that sacred law. You break the chain. You're not merely rejecting a gift, you're rejecting the energy that yearns to flow through you and expand even further. Then there are those who only know how to receive, but lack the capacity to give. They persist in taking, accumulating without grasping that energy when obstructed becomes toxic. Prosperity does not stem from accumulation. It arises from becoming a conduit, akin to a river that understands how to pass, leave behind, and carry freshness onward. Observe nature and learn. Trees do not hoard old leaves when winter arrives. Rivers do not retain stagnant water. The sun does not calculate when it shines, and clouds do not hesitate to rain. Everything understands one truth: energy truly lives only when it flows. And wealth at its deepest level is a manifestation of energy being fully circulated. You can practice this every day without grand gestures. A shared meal, a small donation offered with full presence, a thank you accompanied by a sincere look, and most importantly, giving with the confidence that it will return without needing to know when, how, or from where. I want you to remember this. Every time you give with faith and gratitude, you are not losing, you are multiplying. Every time you receive with appreciation, you are not indebted. You are completing a cycle. And when you live this way daily, money doesn't just come to you. It stays, circulates, and becomes a natural part of how you exist. And then, at some point, you will cease to regard money as a destination. You will begin to perceive it as air, always around you, perpetually in motion, invariably returning, provided you continue to live in openness, circulation, and absolute trust in this sacred law. Much like Beatrice, a woman who embroidered near the local market. Each day she observed the affluent passers-by with a gaze both frigid and skeptical. They must be doing something illicit to possess such wealth, she'd muse internally. Consequently, over time, her clientele dwindled, her commissions diminished, and her income contracted. This wasn't a reflection of her lack of skill, but rather because she existed within a frequency that actively repelled affluence, thus preventing capital from lingering. One cannot attract that which they secretly condemn, just as one cannot forge a bond with someone they perpetually harbor suspicion towards. Or George, a man who used to believe he could never do well. Every morning he'd tell himself, "If only I had more money, my life would be different." But then one day, while tidying up, George stumbled upon pages of an old diary filled with negative thoughts about money. Money only brings pain. People with money have no true friends. I'm not good at managing money. Reading his own words, he was shocked. The world had not turned against him. He had turned against his own prosperity. The words he had uttered and contemplated had quietly painted the financial landscape in which he had resided for years. You see, money is devoid of emotion. It does not hate you, nor does it favor anyone. Money merely flows where a door is opened with corresponding energy. And the mirror that money holds up isn't to punish you. It's to help you clearly see what beliefs you're living by, and whether you're ready to shift your inner image. If you constantly feel you must earn money to receive it, ask yourself, who taught you that? If you hesitate to accept a gift, a compliment, or a financial gesture, perhaps deep down you believe everything must come with a price tag. But life doesn't function like a debt. It flows like energy, and you don't pay energy back. You simply learn to circulate it with gratitude and trust. I want you to try a small exercise, a very simple one, but if done sincerely, it can bring about significant change. Take a piece of paper and write a letter to money. Yes, write to money, as if it were a misunderstood friend. Vent all your honest feelings, how you've hated it, feared it would leave, felt ashamed when you didn't have it, felt guilty when you had more than others. Then write a second letter, this time as if money were a dear friend with whom you want to reconcile. Apologize if necessary. Be grateful for the times it came, even when you didn't realize it. And more importantly, tell him you are ready to embrace a new kind of relationship, genuine, open, and healthy. Because truly, money doesn't change who you are, it amplifies you. If you live in love, money will help you spread love. If you live in fear, money will amplify your fear. Therefore, the question isn't, how do I get more money? But rather, who am I when the money arrives? And am I willing to become the version of myself with whom the money feels secure enough to stay? Money is a mirror, and you are the one who shapes the reflection. If you desire a life of abundance, respect, and value, begin living with those emotions even before your bank account mirrors them. Do not wait for money to arrive to feel secure. Cultivate the sensation of security first, and the money will respond. Do not wait to have much to feel worthy. Live as if you are already enough, not to feign it, but because it is the natural state you have always deserved. And then the miracle will not come in the form of a deposit. It will come from the moment you begin to look at yourself differently. No more judgment, no more fear, no more limitations. From that moment on, you will see money not as something external to you. It will become the most honest expression of your inner journey. A journey that, if you are brave enough to look at, confront, and transform, will result in the mirror reflecting something entirely different. Not scarcity, but abundance. Not fear, but confidence. Not passivity, but co-creation. Upon reflecting on the journey undertaken thus far, we perceive that the diverse facets of prosperity, once dispersed within our understanding, now intertwine harmoniously, forming a tapestry of profound wisdom. What previously seemed an incessant pursuit of something external, unattainable, now reveals itself as a natural unfolding of an inner state. The energy that emanates from us, the frequency we tune into, are not mere abstract concepts, but rather the driving forces that shape the tangible reality we experience. It is as if, after years navigating without a compass, we have finally found the constellation that guides us with unshakable precision. From this new vantage point, the former barriers of limiting beliefs, once so formidable, begin to dissipate like morning mist. What once held us captive, what caused us to hesitate or doubt, loses its grip when confronted with the truth of our own creative power. We understand that true leverage resides not in external manipulation, but in the subtle yet profound art of realigning our being, of allowing our essence to resonate with the abundance that already exists within us. It is an invitation to recognize that the source of all fulfillment is intrinsically linked to how we choose to vibrate. From this convergence of insights, the path forward becomes not a labyrinth to be unraveled, but a clear, inviting landscape where each step is guided by an inner wisdom we now recognize. Inspired action arises not as an arduous endeavor, but as a fluid dance with the universe, a natural movement that springs from confidence and certainty. It is the understanding that by honoring our internal flow, the external adjusts in an organic and powerful manner, echoing the melody we have learned to play within ourselves. As we approach the denouement of this exploration, it is remarkable how the threads of our reflections interweave, culminating in a more profound and integrated understanding. The energy we have discovered within ourselves, the resonance we have cultivated, the ebb and flow of giving and receiving that we have learned to honor, all of this converges upon a central point: our innate capacity to be the conduit. No longer reliant on external currents or the validation of others, we position ourselves as the very wellspring of prosperity, capable of attracting and sustaining that which we previously only dared to dream. And so, we arrive at this point of convergence, where the relentless pursuit of the external reveals itself as an echo of the fullness that resides within. The journey through energy, desire as a compass, emotion as a magnet, and conscious circulation as the essence, culminates in a profound realization. You are not a seeker, but the very source. Wealth, in all its guises, be it material, relational, or spiritual, is not a prize to be won, but a faithful reflection of the vibration you choose to emit. You are the genesis, the gravitational center of your own reality. Stripped of its materialistic trappings, money emerges as a vital current, a messenger of the energy you cultivate. It is not about accumulation, but about allowing the flow to manifest, about being a conduit through which abundance transits, enriching not only oneself, but the collective. Every aligned thought, every elevated emotion, every act of confident generosity weaves a field of attraction to which the universe responds with unfailing precision. You become the conductor of your financial symphony, dictating the melody with clear intention and an open heart. True practice begins not with the acquisition of something new, but with the detachment from that which no longer serves. It involves loosening the bonds of fear, doubt, and inherited beliefs that no longer resonate with your truth. It is an invitation to honor your own essence, to recognize the intrinsic value you carry, irrespective of any external circumstance. By aligning yourself with this truth, you no longer merely attract what you desire. You become the very vessel of what is naturally yours. Abundance ceases to be a future event and transforms into your present reality, experienced in every moment. From this moment forward, life unfolds not as a succession of challenges to be conquered, but as an ongoing dance of creation, wherein you are both the choreographer and the principal dancer. With every breath, you reaffirm your connection to the inexhaustible source of all that is. Money, far from being the ultimate objective, transforms into a steadfast companion on your journey of self-discovery and contribution. It flows to where the light is most intense, to where love is most generous, to where trust is unwavering. You are that light, that love, that trust. And it is in this state of being that true prosperity manifests, not as an end, but as the most beautiful and natural expression of who you truly are. The journey continues, now with the certainty that the source of all abundance resides within you. If this touched your soul, comment below. I am the place where abundance flourishes. Like, share with someone who needs to hear this. And subscribe so you don't miss the next chapters of this inner journey.